Hello and welcome to the first of a monthly devlog series for the indie RPG Nobody. My name is Magnum and I'm the solo developer working on the game. So firstly, what is Nobody? It's a 2D, story-driven, action and turn-based RPG hybrid where choices matter. It takes place in a strange reality called The Well and features you and 4 friends as you try to escape. The main theme of the game is journey. A journey through life, through yourself, and growing as a person due to the obstacles you face on your journey. I'm a writer at heart and that's where I began. I wrote the script drawing inspiration from 2 titles I'd recently replayed, Silent Hill and Undertale. I also read quite a few books to also fuel my imagination, such as We by Yevgeny Zamyatin and No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai. I also read a lot of manga and caught up on a ton of Junji Ito that I'd bought but not read yet. My goal was to make something that resonated with people like me. I wanted something dark that didn't pull any punches but also relished in the upbeat moments too. I had so many crazy ideas at first and the script was just getting longer and longer by the day until it was around 350 pages long and took about 3 months to write and edit. My idea was of 2 worlds, both generally unpleasant. One in which our protagonist has to deal with the daily bullshit of life, and another bizarre world where he can escape the trials and tribulations of reality. Obviously this sounds cliche as hell, so I took this basic idea and began to think of how I can twist and build upon it. Originally the cast were going to be much younger, around 12 or 13, but due to the content of the game I decided to raise their ages significantly. In early iterations the cast were all going to be from the same school, a bit like in Persona. Then I decided they weren't, then I decided they were. And the idea was that in order to get to the other world, you had to be suffering. And this is still true even in the current iteration of the game. In these early versions, the player and friends had all suffered at the hands of a loved one and were still going through that abuse while you played the game. The other world would reflect its patrons, just like it does in Silent Hill. But what was causing our characters to suffer, and who were the characters? What was happening outside of these characters? What was the world they were inhabiting? And development of the world actually came from the rough backstories I'd written for the cast. Clownface was not going to be a silent protagonist, and this was something that I've been 100% set on. Marked came from a religious family, Angel was completely disregarded as a human being, and Witch was in a psychologically manipulative relationship. T0B13, or Toby, was added later on as a sort of comic relief and mascot for the game. I began developing the religion that Marked's family believed in. This religion would go from being just a backstory to a main boss fight, and now it's essentially the main antagonist of the game. In this world, there are no separation of church and state, and this had dire consequences for the inhabitants. People in this world became paranoid and hell-bent on not being sent to the Cleaners, which was a re-education centre. And there were now so many rules and so many things that could get you sent to the Cleaners that people naturally turned on each other. The name and nature for the well came from a couple ideas. The Well of Souls, the word well, like wellness, to be well, the sinking feeling you get when something bad happens, and how fighting against depression or mental illness can be like trying to crawl out of a pit or a well. And by climbing to the top of the well in the game, our characters grow and learn to somewhat accept what has happened to them, and they can begin to heal. The world inside the well is created by human consciousness, and so is infinitely vast and varied and full of anomalies, which are creatures that represent various aspects of human consciousness, such as fears or loves, etc. I knew a sprawling open world would simply be impossible for me to achieve by myself, so I decided to go with an open area design instead, which is what I've mainly stuck to thus far. Rather than having a large, seamless world like in a traditional open world game, for example, the player would have smaller areas that connect to each other, a bit like in Dark Souls. I considered, How can I take the ACT system present in Undertale and develop it? Through that line of thought led to the senses system, where you use your 5 senses to examine and investigate the enemy to discover their weaknesses. And the flexibility of this system that I've implemented means a number of different things can happen when using senses, when combining them, etc. It's still a little buggy right now, and honestly, I still think it's quite cool. I have an enemy that's a microwave, and it can be defeated by turning its power to high and setting it to run for 30 minutes. After 3 turns, the microwave self-destructs and dies. There's another enemy which would become paralysed if you decided to taste its huge teeth. I'm still keeping all these silly interactions in the game, but I've changed the system to become much more streamlined. Originally, you would use your senses to break the enemy's invisible physical form. And by doing this, you would cause something called a no body, which would allow you to deal damage to the enemy that was previously invincible. But this was just way too slow, and it took so long to complete even simple battles. Whereas the new system allows you to damage enemies regularly, but using your senses will provide tangible benefits such as permanent stat increases, hidden items, lore, etc. Of course, there's elemental weaknesses, a combo meter, and also a stagger bar. In this new iteration of the battle system, staggering an enemy completely will cause the nobody, which breaks its defenses and leaves it vulnerable to all elements for a while. The stagger bar will deplete over time, but if you act aggressively, you can keep it going for a while longer. And the combo meter, called the mosh meter, will fill up by using certain moves and powers up special attacks called mosh moves. One thing I have been determined to do is to make sure that the overworld exploration outside of battles is actually interesting. So firstly, there's 3 endings to the game, and the choices you make throughout will dictate what ending you get. Secondly, I find a lot of RPGs, even the big budget ones, have very little to do in the overworld apart from running into battles or opening chests. Half the time, you can't even jump. But what is that about? Why can I fly during attacks but not climb a 1-foot ledge? It's so stupid and immersion breaking, and I find it so annoying when games do that. So I wondered, can I make the overworld exploration similar to A Link to the Past? Complete with tool-like items that allow you to access new areas? And the answer is yes. We got a simple attacking system very similar to how it is in the old Zelda games. And then with a lot of tinkering with in-engine stuff, I've been able to make some overworld skills such as an AoE burst which can activate special things in certain locations, a bit like Zelda's Lullaby in Ocarina of Time. There's also a projectile attack, space boots, a hook shot, a lantern, a shovel, and there's going to be more. Right now I've got a couple ideas for a skateboard, but we'll see if what I want to do is possible. And that's about everything so far. So to summarise, what we have is an action turn-based RPG hybrid with a ton of secrets, puzzles, voice acting, amazing music, great art, an intriguing plot, and choices that will affect your characters and the world around them. You can kill lesser enemies in the overworld with your sword and challenge tougher ones to traditional battles that have various avenues of progression. And if this sounds awesome to you, then there's a couple things you can do. You can check out the website, which has some slightly outdated information on it currently. You could add the game to your Steam wishlist, or you could sign up to get notified when our Kickstarter launches later this year. Additionally, if you want more lore, be sure to check out the Atlas Home video channel. Everything is linked in the description below, and of course, to get more updates, do subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell. The next video will definitely be shorter than this one. Obviously, as I've done so much and this is the first video, I wanted to kind of get it all out there and let you guys know this is what I've been working on for the past year, essentially. Apologies for the length, but either way, I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you in a month.